And joining us now, Pulitzer Prize-winning author and presidential historian Doris Kearns Goodwin. Doris, your thoughts 80 years later, given that you're a student of history and of presidents, but I want to hear your thoughts on President Biden's speech matching the moment that we are in.
You know, I wish, Mika, that this ceremony and the conversations you've had this morning could be broadcast in high schools right now all across the country, because it makes that history come alive. It makes you understand what President Biden was talking about, that the allies came together at this moment on D-Day, and the allies need to stay together today. What I keep thinking of is that was a moment, D-Day, when the leaders for 2 years, Churchill, Eisenhower, and FDR, had taken the lead in preparing us for that day, getting from the factories all the tanks and the weapons and the ships and the planes, an incredible armada that got together. And yet everything was going to depend that morning, not on them anymore, but on the bravery of those individual soldiers who would have to jump off the landing craft, go up that cliff amid the German bullets. And little wonder that those leaders couldn't sleep the night before. I was thinking about it last night when I went to bed, just imagining what it was like for Eisenhower that night, what it was like for Churchill. Churchill said he went in to waken Clementine to say, what's going to happen? Maybe 20,000 of our troops will be killed the following day. Eleanor Roosevelt in the White House could not sleep. She was in an agony of uncertainty. She felt like a sword was over her head, waiting, hoping for this, but dreading it at the same time. Only FDR was able to sleep, partly because his paralysis had taught him that when there are events where you can't control them, then you just have to decide to go with it and go to sleep. So when the marshal called at 3 a.m. in the morning to tell him that the war had started, that the troops were going, they were moving forward, they had landed, she was the one who had to awaken FDR. He immediately called his cabinet and White House staff to come together. And the saddest thing was that he and Churchill wanted to be together on that day. Churchill said he needed to be with his closest friend, but FDR's health was not such, so they were apart during that day. But so happy to hear that news that night, in the middle of the night, that the day had begun.
Doris, we've been looking pictures from 80 years ago all morning long. We've been talking about an event that occurred 80 years ago all morning long. And in large parts of this country, I suspect it still really resonates. The pictures and the faces that we see of the aging veterans, 100-year-old men, still resonate. My question to you as a historian is, given the limited attention span that we now have in this country with everything, where September 11th seems distant to many people, and many people can't put their finger on what happened on September 11th. They're so submerged in information, both false and accurate, about a number of topics. What will historians have to say about this moment in America? There's no war that involves Americans, thank God, right now, really. What will historians what will you have to dig at to find out what was up with the American culture today?
I mean, what I've got to hope is that 50 or 100 years from now, when historians look at this moment, they will see that we finally came up to the challenge that we're facing. I don't think we have so far come up to that challenge, obviously, given the divisions in our country right now, given the question about isolationism still being a strain in American democracy right now, given the worries about what's happening with the former president and the trials. We're in a very difficult situation. And the only thing that gives me hope sometimes is just looking back. It seemed at the time of the Civil War, as Lincoln said, that we were in a situation when the South was not willing to agree to losing that election. They decided to secede from the Union rather than accept that loss. A similar echo today. At the time of the Depression, somebody said to FDR, you know, if your New Deal program works, you'll be one of the greatest presidents. If it fails, you'll be one of the worst. He said, no, I will be one of the last. So we were in those situations in early World War II, when Germany swept through Western Europe, leaving only Britain standing alone. We were only 18th in military power. We had nothing to help England with. It looked like they would be destroyed. If Hitler had decided not to go to Russia, but to go to England first, the whole fate of the country, of the world, would have been different, and we would have been little able to prepare. And yet we immobilized. The country came together, the home front and the war front. We produced a plane every 4 minutes, a tank every 7 minutes. We produced a ship that was launched every single day, and we've got to remember that. I just hope that history is being diminished in colleges, it's being diminished in high schools. If we don't remember those moments when we came through, we're in such a tough moment now. It's going to take us a long time to get through it. The only thing I keep thinking of is I wish we could have some kind of national service program so that the young people coming out of high school would be able to go to a different part of America. They could see what it's like to live in a city or a country, or rural or an agricultural. They see north and south, and we would no longer feel what Teddy Roosevelt warned, that America would be in peril if people see each other as the other rather than as common American citizens from different sections, regions, and countries. That's what we've got to build back again, that sense of being citizens. And if this can't do it, I've heard the emotion in your voice, Mike. I've known you for 50 years. Reading that column again, hearing that column, I remember reading it at the time, reading your columns year after year in the Globe. And I feel so emotional as you do. This is so important that people re-feel that emotion so we know what history has done in the past and what we can do again in the future.
Never forget presidential historian Doris Kearns Goodwin. Thank you. Doris's new book, An Unfinished Love Story, A Personal History of the 1960s, is available now. Doris, thank you so much for coming on this morning.